I like the fact that there is a traceability there, that they can ask the question. Customers can ask the question and they say, who's caught this fish? And people are starting to ask those sort of questions. Where has it been caught? Who's catching it? And I feel like that's the way the industry's going, and I feel like that's the way it needs to go. I want this here for my kids, and hopefully one day it's still there for my kids' kids as well.
This is the Fish Tales podcast. I'm John Susman. Good fishermen tend to be very observant of their surroundings, the weather and the environment. They see how things tie together and make connections that the less astute fishermen usually miss. The more you notice things, the better. Good fishermen tend to be adaptable. They are willing and able to change locations, tactics, gear and bait as the situation calls for it, and are well practiced in many tactics and techniques of fishing. Good fishermen understand their prey and their prey's seasonal habits. In particular, they understand that location is far more important than choice of lure. A good fisherman will tend to want to know where and how you caught a fish rather than what with. The New South Wales wild harvest commercial fishing industry is a dynamic network of skilled but mostly small operators. The New South Wales fishing industry is primarily made up of family businesses that rely on high levels of local knowledge and skills learned over many generations. For Luke Buchholz, turning his passion into a profession didn't come with generations of experience in commercial fishing. Part of the emerging next generation of fishermen who are focused on quality over quantity, Luke's approach has been to work closely with his chef customers, both learning from them and helping them to better understand the opportunistic nature of wild-caught seafood.
My family and I, we were born in Lithgow in the Blue Mountains, and then every school holidays we'd come to Southwest Rocks. And my father had been coming here since he was a kid. My grandfather had been coming since he was a kid, and we would always have our family holidays up here, and every chance we got, we were fishing. My pop used to take me fishing all the time. My dad used to take me fishing, and Southwest Rocks back in those days was a dirt road in, a dirt road out, and it was predominantly a fishing village. So that was what was done here, and my pop was probably the biggest driver for my love of the ocean and my love of fishing. He's passed away now, but he lived and breathed it. He used to, any chance he used to get, he used to drive up from Lithgow, which back in those days would have been a 13, 14-hour trip, just for a long weekend so we could go, fishing for dew on the wall. And our holidays, our family holidays, was then based around Southwest Rocks. And then when I was 6 years old, my parents bought a hotel in Kempsey, and we moved up from the cooler climate. Basically I went to school up here, and we were always around the ocean. My brother and I, we were, into our sport a lot, and we were big in swimming, and we did triathlons and surfing, and then it was just, it was really just natural progression. We went from the fishing, and I got really heavily into spearfishing there for a long time. Once I sort of left school, I was living up on the Gold Coast at that stage, and I used to dive. I sort of know the waters basically from Port Macquarie through to Cairns. I've dived most headlands and a lot of the Great Barrier Reef and Moreton Island and Stradbroke. And so the love started for me when I was really young, and definitely came from my pop and my father. And it's something that I'll be passing on to my kids.
Luke comes from a family born in the bush but with a love of the ocean. With a grandfather and father, both manic recreational fishermen, the seed was sown that would become the driving force behind Luke's ultimate move into professional fishing.
I've been fishing commercially for about 5 years now. So I'm not like, I guess, one of these other family, multi-generation fishermen. But I've always been interested in fishing. I did a lot of spearfishing when I was younger. And then just, I guess, slowly came to the commercial fishing industry by chance. We started out as lobster fishermen. So my brother was working on a lobster fishing boat. There was an opportunity to come up to buy his the business and the boat. So my brother called me and said, look, this is what I'm planning on doing. And I was an electrician at the time. I'd been doing fly-in, fly-out work for probably about 12 years at the time. And I'd sort of had enough and was looking for a bit of a change myself. And being, always sort of growing up around the ocean and loving fishing and spearfishing and stuff like that, I was, quite keen to give it a go. So I moved from Melbourne back up to South of Shocks, back to my sort of hometown where I grew up. And we started lobster fishing. And then a series of things sort of unrolled with that business that allowed us to, basically stopped us from fishing lobsters. We couldn't afford to buy the license itself. So, and then natural progression, we started trapping fish, and then we moved into sort of the more sustainable side of line caught, which is what we only do now.
The ocean trap and line fishery of the New South Wales North Coast is one of the most important commercial fisheries in the state. With a vast number of species, from the migratory pelagic such as tuna, mackerel, mahi-mahi, kingfish and bonito, to the seasonal snapper, mowong, silver trevally, tailor and leatherjackets, the range is as diverse as can be found on the coast. Weather, market demand and water temperature impact the species Luke will be catching, making his business truly a reflection of the season.
Everything's seasonal. We're kind of lucky in that where we live, we get everything. So, in the warmer months, we're lucky in that we get everything from, your Spanish mackerel and spotted mackerel through your wahoo and dolphin fish, all these sort of different types of tuna. And the winter months, we sort of target snapper and mulloway, tailor, kingfish. The water cools off a little bit. We still get the odd bonito from time to time, but we get a good range of species here, throughout the year.
Despite increased pressure on small fishermen, including the expansion of marine parks, rising fuel and operating costs and increased competition from imports, Luke's business continues to boom as his customers of leading chefs and restaurants enjoy both his quality and direct supply. Long hours, working by himself and managing all aspects from maintaining the boat to selling and delivering the fish makes the job of the artisan fisherman truly a labour of love.
A normal work day would sort of start with me getting up at about anywhere between 4:30 and 5 o'clock. And now most of the time I work alone. I've got a small boat. It's only 4.5 metres that we launch around here. We can launch off the beach, or we've got a few boat ramps in here that we use. And I'll head out in the morning and go and target, whatever's seasonal at the time, and then I'll come home and pack fish if I've caught anything, and then I sort of start the process contacting different chefs up and down the coast, depending on where. If I have enough fish, I usually try to do a run up to the Gold Coast. We've got a series of probably 10 or 12 restaurants that we deal with up there. I contact them individually and they put their orders in. And then if the weather's good, I'll fish in the afternoon, weather permitting. The next day, depending on the delivery day, I'll pack fish probably early in the morning around 3 o'clock, and then we hop in the car, and either myself, my wife or my brother will drive up and down the coast to do our deliveries, and then that's basically start again the next day.
Despite the long-held belief in popular media that every chef enjoys a direct and symbiotic relationship with a posse of seafood catchers and growers, the truth is mostly the opposite. The pressure of running a profitable hospitality business demands chefs to be on top of their costs and have a broad market appeal. This can be fundamentally at odds with the supply of wild seafood from a small artisan producer. From initially selling through the local cooperative to the larger auction houses of the city-based wholesalers, Luke felt he needed to engage more directly with artisan chefs who would appreciate the work that he puts into producing the quality he does. Social media delivers both the catcher and the cook direct access to each other. Being able to engage with each other takes patience and passion.
It sort of was natural progression. I started selling, we started moving stuff down to Sydney fish markets ourselves, and then I started dealing with a few of the bigger people down there, the DeCostis and the Poulos brothers and stuff like that. And then through social media, chefs started reaching out directly to us, and basically for us, it's progressed that way. And now really that's how I sell most of our fish. Probably 90% is sold directly to restaurants. And it's taken time to obviously get that sort of the customer base built up. But yeah, we try to limit what we send to the floor as much as possible. When they sort of call me and ask me how I work, the first thing that I explain to them is like, we only have 2 fishermen in our fleet. It's basically myself and my brother, and we're doing everything, which, we're doing the packing, we're doing the deliveries ourselves. So when they contact me, the first thing I explain to them is that, look, guys, we're only small fry here, and we don't catch a lot of fish. We're not the best fishermen out there, and I'm first to admit that. But what we do catch and what we sell, I believe, is a premium product, and we put so much time into looking after our fish. And look, 90% of chefs have been really, really responsive to that, and they've been really flexible with their orders and stuff, and they understand, they get it. I think nowadays there seems to be a change in, with chefs having set menus with, selected fish and stuff. They realise that they just can't do that anymore. And the way to do that for them to be flexible is to run, like the special board and whatever's seasonal, and it works really well with us because it's really hard being, a small-time operator trying to provide just one type of fish. But, when I first started, people were really picky in the whole, like the class as well. They only wanted large, or they'd only want mediums or smalls, and for us, we might only catch 40 or 50 kilos a day. And of that, I might have every class, so it's really hard to give someone something off the shelf, so to speak, if that makes sense. So, but yeah, 90% of chefs have been really, really, really helpful and responsive to what we do. They deal with me directly. They're not dealing with anyone else. Every chef has my mobile number, so if there's ever an issue or if there's anything we can do better, they always give me a heads up, and I'm more than, and I don't know everything. I haven't been in the industry for that long, so yeah, we're very open to their suggestions. We seem to be getting it right, I believe. And it's more, I think our biggest issue at the moment is catching enough fish for the supply. We definitely have the demand there. We just can't keep up with it.
Just as social media can provide direct conduit between catcher and cook, so too it can provide a platform of aspiration and motivation for younger chefs, fascinated by what the opinion makers in the industry can provide. For Luke, Josh Niland, Wonderkin seafood chef, provided such a platform and gave the guidance and motivation for Luke to take the entire supply chain into his own hands.
He was the first guy that really sort of reached out to me as a chef and said, look, we want to take you guys on and try some of your product. And back in those days, we never did any of the transport ourselves. So it was difficult for me to get product to Sydney quickly. Being so remote where I am, trucks only left on certain days, and most of the time they'd sit in warehouses, and then you'd have couriers that would have to go and pick it up, and fish would get lost and get left in warehouses, and that's why I've taken the whole transport side into my own hands. And I've just bought another vehicle which is now stuck in Sydney that I can't get to at the moment due to the current lockdowns. But so Josh was the first guy that sort of reached out to us, and mate, he's amazing. The stuff that he does is just mind blowing, and really from him, I would say that 90% of my other clients have basically reached out through him through social media. And yeah, he's been the biggest platform for me. It's I can't thank him enough for everything that he does for me. But he's a genius.
The small artisan fisherman is a true reflection of the skills of the hunter. With a deep, innate knowledge of local conditions by season, by tide and moon phase, it's just part of the job. Knowing what to target, what bait and fishing format is required, and what the market desire for a particular species might be is all just in a day's work.
So, depending on what we're targeting, for instance, if, like this morning I was out catching tailor, so we're out driving around the headlands, basically flicking a hard body lure into the wash, casting repeatedly until we're ready to go home, or the tides tell us that we have to go home. We sort of travel up and down the coast. We sort of fish as far south as Port Macquarie and as far north as Coffs Harbour. And so it just depends. I do a lot of travelling. I've got a small boat, and having a small boat, it allows me to launch off the beach and pull back up off the beach, sometimes not so successfully. More often than not, I end up getting stuck, or I end up making a scene, and most people get a good laugh at me on the beach, sunken to the hilt. But we travel up and down the coast a lot, and tailor season is basically driving from headland to headland and spinning in the wash. One rod, one lure, one cast, one fish. That's basically the nuts and bolts of it.
The artisan fisher is by nature a sustainable operator. Catching across species and seasons ensures that what is taken from the ocean has a value on a plate somewhere. The problem is that sometimes this results in a species consumers may or may not have heard of, or are reluctant to order from previous poor experiences. However, when the catcher, cook and customer align, a once lesser known species can become a true restaurant star.
It's something that's really difficult to change, and it's one fish that I really struggle to move, purely because I don't think it's the chefs that have an issue with trying to work with it. It's more the consumers. A lot of people have that mindset, preconceived idea about tailor, and tailor being bait and so on. I personally think tailor is one of the nicest fish in the ocean. It's my wife's favourite fish. And there are a few things. That's the few things we do struggle with. A lot of people do have preconceived ideas about certain fish. A lot of people want fish that don't taste like fish, like pearl perch and snapper and stuff like that. And it's I guess at the end of the day, it's more just educating people, but 90% of chefs are willing to give it a go. It's just more their clientele. I find that any restaurant that's close to the ocean or in a fishing village, they won't touch it. But the sort of the restaurants that are in cities and a bit more sort of inland, then they have no trouble. I honestly thought when I first started fishing, I thought bonito was going to be something like that. But bonito has become one of the most highly demanded fish in the ocean for us. We cannot catch enough of them, to be honest. and the demand there is huge, and I'm guilty of having that preconceived idea myself. I always grew up using what we used to call them leadies. I remember my pop fishing with a couple of his mates that were commercial guys here in town, and they used to fill 44-gallon drums with them. And I remember Pop freezing them down, and they were the best snapper bait you could find. But yeah, now it's you look at it, it's crazy. It's one of the highest. I think it must be one of the highest averaging fish on the market for today, year round.
Fishing is a primal endeavour. We've been doing it as a species for thousands of years in one form or another. So in the big picture, there really shouldn't be any confusion as for why people love the thrill of the hunt as much as they do. Many non-hunters think that people hunt or fish because of some out-of-control bloodthirst. Serious fishermen know this couldn't be further from the truth. The fishing community generally has a very strong connection with nature, including the animals that they pursue. This manifests itself in real respect for the environment and the seafood they hunt, from understanding it, stalking it, killing it, and then utilising as much of it as possible and being thankful the whole time.
Every day's different, and that's the best thing about it. I don't know what I'm going to catch until I've caught it, and there's something exciting about that still to this day that just, I get so excited. I don't get sick of catching fish, and I'm sure there's people out there that would, but for me, I still get just as excited to catch, a mulloway or a big tailor or a big snapper. It excites me as much as it did the first day that I started fishing with my pop. and look, that's what brings me back every day. And some days it's average. Look, we work out of really small boats, and 90% of the time I come home wet. It can blow up or it rains, or I can just get wet travelling from A to B. So yeah, those days where you catch no fish and you cop a flogging, so to speak. Those days are the ones where you sort of just got to come home and reset and get up the next day and give it another crack.
Luke Buchholz is a reflection that the seafood industry has a bright, exciting and sustainable future, a true star of the sea. This is the Fish Tales podcast, a Deep in the Weeds production. I'm John Susman. Stay tuned for more tales from beneath the surface of the seafood world.